Talking to Ohio State defensive lineman here after practice Thursday at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I'm Nathan Baird from cleveland.com along with Stephen Means. And one guy that everybody is excited to see, we would have loved to have heard from him today too, is Kenyatta Jackson, redshirt freshman. Really flashed some things in spring when we got to see them do full team scrimmage situations. A lot of building excitement from within the program for a guy who was a really highly rated prospect. We didn't talk to him today. Larry Johnson likes to keep those guys off the radar as long as he can sometimes. Do you think Kenyatta Jackson, as much talent as there is on this defensive line, veteran talent, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Mike Hall Jr., Baby Aaron Donald, Tywone Malone, all the guys that they have that they know can get to a quarterback, Tyleik Williams, can Kenyatta Jackson lead this team in sacks in 2020? Will Kenyatta Jackson lead Ohio State in sacks in 2023?
I love how we're doing this because it's like Kenny and Willie do it. I think he can. I think he's that he's the only guy, whether it's now in fall camp or in the spring, that we're expecting to be a part of the defensive line rotation, whether inside or out, that we have not talked to. And I think that means something. You made a great point. Larry Johnson tries to keep these guys under the radar as long as possible. There's a reason he's keeping Kenyatta Jackson under the radar, and it's not because he sucks. It's probably because he's doing stuff like he was in the spring. Will he? No. And it has nothing to do with him, and it has everything to do with what I think Jack and JT and Mike Hall can do. I just think they're going to have a lot of opportunities. I think there's going to be some games where Larry Johnson, you and I were having a conversation with Larry Johnson after we're talking about, the rotations and stuff like that, just trying to get a better understanding of things. And I get where he's coming from, but he also did admit that there's going to be some games where the guys are just going to play 60 snaps because it's that type of game. And I don't know, Larry Johnson's resume and just like the way he operates, he tends to go with the older guys when you're talking about playing 60 snaps. And your older guys are 2 former 5-star recruits, a top 100 recruit, and a guy in Ty Hamilton who he called his anchor. And I think that's who's going to be out there. And so they're just going to have more opportunities to get sacks. And I think they both, especially Jack and JT, because we saw the leak from Mike Hall last year. He just wasn't healthy. I think Jack and JT might be ready to take that leap to consistency because we've seen the flashes. We just haven't seen it consistent yet. While with Kenyatta Jackson, I think he might be at the step where it's flash, but it's not necessarily consistent yet.
So I don't think he will. We did predictions for sack leaders this year for Ohio State. I think we both picked Jack Sawyer to lead Ohio State in sacks this year around 7, 8, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think it can happen, though, and I think the determining factor will be, is Kenyatta Jackson in the Rushman package or not? Obviously, for people who don't know, it's the famous, Larry Johnson usually taking a third defensive end, putting him on the field as sliding somebody in to tackle, and that's who you're putting out there in like third and long situations and really coming at it with a pass rush with 4 guys. And we were talking before, like, is he in that package right now, which means you kick JT Tuimoloau or Jack Sawyer inside, or do you run with, again, what you're talking about, more veteran guys, Mike Hall, Tywone Malone, Tyleik Williams, keeping 2 defensive tackles out there? Because right now you do have an abundance of defensive tackles who are proven pass rush weapons for you. And that's not always the case here. Sometimes you have guys, you can think back to maybe like a 2020 where you had someone like Tommy Togiai in the middle who you wanted out there as much as possible, but was a big like run stopping guy. And like, I don't know if Haskell Garrett was like a pass rush specialist the way that the guys they have now, that maybe not specialist isn't the right word, but are just very adept at it. And I think if they decide that Kenyatta Jackson is so ready and so good right now that he has to be on the field in Rushman package, I think it opens the door for something like this, because he's still going to be maybe the least known quantity there, and teams are going to have to decide who they neutralize with doubles and other scheme things, and who is maybe in a more advantageous position to just go get that sack on any given snap. And it might be him that ends up with that advantage, at least early on, until teams catch up to that. But that's one of the many things that we're going to be waiting to see on September 2nd in Indiana, is exactly how they line up with some specificity, some individual guys, especially young individual guys in this defense. And we're going to be talking a lot more about this on the Buckeye Talk podcast. You can find that on iTunes. You can find that on Spotify, anywhere you can find podcasts. And get the text 614-350-3315, because all those things that Larry Johnson and the defensive ends and tackles were talking about today was going through my phone to your phone from Buckeye Talk.